Welcome, Blue Believers, to another episode of the Stamford Sink, where we are syncing up with everything Chelsea FC. And amidst all of the news, the furor, we're going to take a moment to just have some fun with transfers, and we're going to play another game of one in, one out. And it is my distinct pleasure to welcome to the channel for the first time an OG Chelsea YouTuber in Daniel Child from Son of Chelsea. Dan, bro, how's it going, man?
Really good, mate. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, it's nice to actually have a bit of fun with some transfers because there isn't much happening at the moment, realistically, in terms of players coming in.
Yeah, no, 100%. And that's it, isn't it? Like, we can all get caught up in the realism of it and, who's going out and who might actually come in. But sometimes it's just fun to remember what it's like to dream a little bit, right? So with that in mind, we're going to pick 5 players. You're going to pick 5 players. 5 players you'd like to see leave the club and 5 players you'd like to replace them with. So, Dan, let's get into it. Who is your first player out and who would you like to replace him with?
So I was originally just going to say Jorgensen, but that's just lazy, because he doesn't want to be here. No one else, I think, wants him to be here that much longer. So I've gone with Rob Sanchez. I don't think Rob Sanchez is a terrible keeper, but I think in terms of it's a position that many people feel we kind of need to upgrade seriously, or at least provide a buffer for Mike Penders. Because I'm kind of a big believer that you either commit to Mike Penders this summer or he goes out on loan. I don't really like this halfway sort of house of him staying because it's just going to be a bottleneck for him, especially with no European football. The name is not a surprising one to a lot of people. Mike Maignan, trying to be a bit more realistic of targets that Chelsea could actually acquire. There's still rumours about him with obviously the season AC Milan have just had, that he could potentially be leaving. And I just think it would actually, in a symbolic way, like, you've got to think about the last time, I think it was Thibaut Courtois, wasn't it, that we had international number 1 in a major nation playing for Chelsea, and that I think makes a difference. His, we've been through this a number of times. His experience level, his maturity. I think the fact that he was captain of a huge football club, no matter if they've not been as great as they once were, AC Milan. Yeah. You think about them winning the Scudetto several years back, and he was a major part of that as well. So he has extensive experience at a big football club, and again, it just kind of, that know-how, that knowledge, I think you have to have big characters and older, experienced, prime characters in this group that we've been lacking for a long period of time. So that's the first trade that I'd make.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely Mike Maignan's been on the name on a lot of fans' lips for a little while. I agree with you. Rob Sanchez isn't a terrible keeper. My kind of take on him is he's proved to us 3 years in a row that he can't consistently be good for an entire season. Yeah. At his best, he's won us games and, saved us points. But under 3 different managers, he's been dropped and replaced by whoever the backup is. Unfortunately, last season the backup was Philip Jorgensen, which didn't go particularly well. And I also really agree with you. I think it's really pertinent, something you said about Mike Penders. This halfway house situation feels dangerous, doesn't it? Because it feels like we could have a potential absolute legend in the goal for the next decade or whatever. And if we don't manage this situation right, vis-a-vis Jordi Petrovic, for instance, not saying he had as much potential, but we lost him. And I feel like something similar could happen with Mike Penders. If he doesn't get enough game time this season, then he could just agitate for a move. And because we didn't pay very much for him, Blue Coal be like, yeah, sound, we'll get a bit of profit for you. So Mike Maignan, just international goalkeeper, like for France, unbelievable. Like you said, a lot of pressure at being at AC Milan. And it's interesting because he came out just before the window saying that if AC Milan don't get into the Champions League and Allegri doesn't stay, with one of those, I need both of those things to be the case, and neither of those things are the case. So it does seem up for debate that he could be available for sale. I have a feeling this might run into the very end of the window. If he doesn't move before then, I've got a feeling that we could be hovering around the goalkeeper situation until the window closes. But Mike Maignan is a really solid choice. It would just only hurt that we could have got him for so cheap.
Yeah, I still don't know why we didn't make that deal happen last summer. It still completely baffles me. And Sanchez, I thought Sanchez, up until Maresca left, up until Christmas, I thought he was actually probably like one of Chelsea's best performers. And I think it's a variety of factors, right? The change in head coach, Rossinha playing a style that just doesn't suit Rob Sanchez, that I think exposed his biggest weaknesses, when I think Maresca had kind of adapted the game to kind of get the best out of Rob Sanchez. And you kind of wonder what could have happened if he was going on the same path. But I agree with you that if you look at his career in sort of totality, like it's been a mixed bag, right? There's been some really bad tragic times. There's been some really good times. Unfortunately, that is the case for a lot of Chelsea players. Like I feel like Sanchez is not abnormal in that sense, but it's such a big position. It's such a delicate position that you have to manage properly, and it feels like we've not had a certified number one there for such a long period of time. Like going for a full season where that is the number one guy, and there's kind of no doubt about it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Like this whole thing with how often we've been changing our goalkeepers over the last few seasons. Like name the last time that a title-winning team didn't have one goalkeeper in pretty much every single game for the entire season. You know, Arsenal did it, didn't they, with Ramsdale and Raya? But ultimately, Raya won that battle, and they've gone on to win the league. So yeah, I completely agree with you. Edouard Mendy was the closest we got to having like a solid goalkeeper, and then he just completely dropped off. And it feels like since Courtois left, we have been scraping in the goalkeeper department. And I think it's a position that a lot of people would like to see sorted. Either way, even if we got Mike Maignan, that's not necessarily sorting it out. That's, like you said at the beginning, kind of giving us a buffer to have a solid first team keeper, but also give Penders the opportunity to grow at the club. But my thing is, if we get Maignan, then send Penders on loan, because there's almost no point in bringing Penders in if he's going to play like Philip Jorgensen did, 9 to 12 games a season. So if we bring in Maignan, commit to that, send Penders out on a Premier League loan if possible. But yeah, that's kind of where I sit with that, and then probably keep Rob Sanchez as the number 2.
Yeah, agreed. I just think it is such a delicate balancing act. Like I do have my concerns about Mike Penders. I just think they've just got to make it quite clear. Because I don't even know from Penders' point of view, like how he could be comfortable with coming in and battling for number one. Because it's just such a different position to. I've seen people sort of go, oh, we could phase sort of Penders in across the course of the season. It just doesn't really work like that with goalkeepers. It's not like a right back. It's not like any other position in the team, really. Like you can, if you can do that with right backs, you can do that with even centre backs. You can do that with central midfielders and wide players. It's really a bit like striker. I think those two positions at each end of the team are ones that kind of are the most pressurised and kind of the most defining, and you kind of have to have a lot more certainty in them than other areas of the pitch that you can kind of get away with. Okay, maybe we're kind of going to mix and match a little bit here with rotating.
Yeah. I get this feeling that if we do the battle, there's two things for me. The battle thing, if Penders is up for having that battle, mad props and huge respect, because every single time we generally tend to propose compete for your position with a Chelsea player, they're normally not into it, and they normally want to end up leaving. Like we've seen that countless times before. Courtois was up for coming into battle with Czech, for instance, and that showed you his character, his personality, and his self-belief, which for a goalkeeper is so important. And the other thing is, in terms of what might happen in terms of the battle, I have a feeling the battle will be a little bit more of Penders gets a shot at being the first team goalkeeper, and if he's not good enough, then Robert Sanchez gets back in. Because I have a feeling that Xabi Alonso is going to want Penders' passing ability, which is far superior to that of Robert Sanchez. Long ball football isn't really Alonso's game, I don't think, and a goalkeeper like Penders, if he can handle the rigours and the pressure of the Premier League, I think will probably fit into that quite well. So Robert Sanchez for Mike Maignan, it's not a crazy shout, it makes a lot of sense. So who is your second out, and who would you like to replace him with?
Maybe this is slightly cheating because he's now left, but Cucurella, obviously we're going to have to replace Cucurella with someone, and there's obviously a lot of chatter at the moment of either we're going to give Jarell Hato sort of that first team spot, we're going to even use Barco potentially. There are two names that kind of stand out. Again, it's maybe a bit far-fetched, or it's just, I think these are statement additions of kind of sort of sitting there and going, we've lost a prime player. Whatever you think about Cucurella, he is he's in the prime of his career. He's an older player within the group. We need someone ready-made to come in, and also with the mindset that I don't really see Hato as a left back or wing back in his future. I see a centre back there more so, in my opinion. So the two names are Lewis Hall, or of course in a more dream situation, a reunion with Alex Grimaldo. And I've even heard some chat that potentially he might be looking to leave Leverkusen.
Okay.
And it's quite funny, actually, because way back before we signed Ben Chilwell, there was a time when Alex Grimaldo was even rumoured to be a Chelsea target when he was still at Benfica. So kind of coming full circle there. I think Lewis Hall's probably the more realistic of the two, because, they're talking about signing Premier League prime sort of ready players who can come in and make an impact. It's whether Hall would want to come back to Chelsea, I think, is the biggest obstacle there. But he's an absolutely quality fullback. I think he could easily slot in as a left wing back. Probably even could do a job as a left centre back. He's got a really good engine. Defensively, 1-on-1, he's had some brilliant performances for Newcastle. He's been up against the likes of Lamine Yamal in the past and fared pretty well. So technically and tactically, I think there's a lot there. I think people were quite stunned that he didn't go to the World Cup integral squad as well. So I think Lewis Hall probably more so than Grimaldo. But Grimaldo, again, like if you talk about older players, and we've seen it before where Jorginho coming in with Sarri, Carvalho coming in with Mourinho. It's not, or the more recent one, Dewsbury Hill coming in with Maresca, even though Dewsbury Hill didn't play at all. But at the time when Dewsbury Hill came in, everyone was thinking he was going to be like a Jorginho figure, and that just never turned out to be the case. But we've seen this before where managers and coaches who have good relationships with players before. But I feel like Chelsea should be going out in the market and signing a left back. I'm kind of that belief.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think it's really interesting with Yoro Hato because, like you say, positionally it's kind of still up for debate, isn't it? Because for the back end of the season, he played really well for us in that left centre back role, and you could potentially see him starting at left back, but almost a la Maresca becoming the left centre back if a Reece James starts on the right and inverts into midfield and stuff like that. My issue with the Yoro Hato situation is we need to stop throwing 20-year-olds into our first team and putting all that pressure on them. The job of Xabi Alonso next season is to get the team from 10th to 4th, right? And if you say to Yoro Hato, that's your job now, that's a lot of pressure. And it's not even that he couldn't handle it, but it's the second he makes a mistake, he gets more penalised because he's the first team guy. So for me, I love the Grimaldo shout. It makes the most sense to me only if we're going to kind of recreate that Leverkusen sort of thing. I'm not convinced that Grimaldo would necessarily, based on his defensive stats from the last couple of seasons, he's absolutely phenomenal attacker, amazing at dead balls, and there's so much to his game. And the age thing I think works as well because it creates a pathway for Yoro Hato potentially if he is going to be that guy, or gives us a buffer of a season or two to identify the right left back or left wing back to replace him with if Yoro Hato isn't going to be that guy as well. Lewis Hall, the only thing I have with Lewis Hall is the age. Like, I think he's a phenomenal player and I think he's got so much potential. But if Yoro Hato is going to be that guy, then you bring in a Lewis Hall and all of a sudden you're not looking at a pathway for Yoro Hato to develop, you're looking at straight competition, and you're throwing another 21-year-old into the squad after, like you said at the beginning, losing Cucurella's age and experience, which is something we're going to need in the squad. So as much as I love Lewis Hall and I would be absolutely buzzing to see him in, I really, really would. I am a little bit concerned about the money it would cost. They're selling Anthony Gordon to Barcelona for 70 mil. Lewis Hall's probably going to cost 50, 60 mil, something like that. Albeit I think we've got some sort of sell-on clause which could help reduce the price. But yeah, no, it's a really interesting one with Lewis Hall. The Grimaldo shout I absolutely love. I haven't seen loads of links, but it just feels natural, doesn't it? It's, like you said, even Liam Rosinier brought in Mamadou Sarr.
and then played him once and we never saw him again.
Yeah, wild, absolutely wild. But no, the left back situation obviously needs sorting, and for me it is so much more important because you wouldn't necessarily have called Marc Cucurella a leader in terms of being like vice captain or anything like that, but I think he, on his best day, 100% a leader by example, and an older head. He was liked in the dressing room. He had experience playing at a high level and developed with us, so I think if we lose that, Levi Colwell's still really young, for instance. I don't want to de-age our defence too much, essentially. So that's kind of my one concern with Lewis Hall. But as a player, as the profile of the player, yeah, absolutely, I'd love to see him in.
Yeah. I also think there's just a bit of mystery at the moment in terms of what the left back situation is going to look like, whether it's going to be a wing back or a left back. I guess it's hard to kind of know at the moment. And I think it's something I've written about on my Substack that I think that we've got a whole space for the reality that, we may be converting some wingers. Like I could see Pedro Neto potentially playing there if he sticks around, maybe even Kavuma McQueen or a Genesis Antwi from the academy are promoted and given a chance, especially in pre-season before some of the players return from the World Cup. But I think if you're going to make a splash, if you're going to look, you've lost a key player, so you have to kind of decipher, like, do you have confidence in the internal options to do what we're talking about here to make up for what you're losing from Cucurella? Even though I thought Cucurella had a bad last season, and if you balance out his Chelsea performances overall in his Chelsea career, it's a mixed bag. It's definitely not all amazing.
Yeah, I think there's very few players in the squad who can hold their heads up for the last season in general. So a lot of people are saying that, like, Cucurella had a bad last season, glad to see him go and whatever. And it's like, yeah, mate, look at like the rest of the squad. It's kind of Barjal, Pedro. Everyone had a bad season, really. There's very few standout players that were solid throughout. So yeah, really, really important. And you hit on it as well. I think it'll be interesting to see whoever we sign for that position will give us some sort of indication of what Alonso's thinking is for the system that we're going to play as well. So I do think that's really interesting. So far, goalkeeper and a left back, and the goalkeeper shout is a lot of people probably would have expected Robert Sanchez to not be widely loved by the Chelsea fans for his last few seasons, although there are some Robert Sanchez defenders for sure. Cucurella obviously already out, but you raised a massive point that the left back situation is so important. Who is your third player out, and who would you like to replace him with?
So this is a player that I wouldn't want to sell, but I think realistically he is going to be leaving, and that is Enzo Fernandez. But I'm a big believer that we have to have a trade in that situation. You have to extract, because for me, you're losing 15 goals. You're losing someone who's contributed some massive goals to Chelsea.
For sure.
I'm a big fan of Enzo Fernandez. I think on the pitch he's been a big player for us, and I think that you can't lose what we're losing from him and just kind of shrug your shoulders. I think that there is like with Cucurella, I think you can get around it. I think with Enzo Fernandez, it's much more difficult. Now, the player I'm going to suggest trading, I don't think is going to replace Enzo in terms of his attacking output, but a lot of people talk about what the midfield lacks, especially alongside Caicedo, and there has always absolutely been a difficulty for several Chelsea head coaches to find the balance between Enzo Fernandez and Moises Caicedo, why we've eventually played Enzo further up the pitch. This is a player I've wanted for a long way before he even joined Real Madrid, and that is Aurelien Tchouaméni.
Nice.
So if there was a deal to be done where we could get Real Madrid get a knockdown price for Enzo Fernandez, we get Aurelien Tchouaméni in exchange, he'd be the guy I'd be going for. Again, maybe a bit of fantasy, but Chelsea are going to trade with Real Madrid, and there has already been chatter of some trade. I mean, actually, the trade is maybe for a left back rather than strictly, swap midfielder for midfielder. But I'm such a big fan of Tchouaméni, and he does have goals every now and then to his game, but I think his physicality, the way he's able to read the game, I think him and Caicedo in central midfield, I think they could really dovetail and complement each other really, really well. And maybe would free up Cole Palmer to find his best form again, because that's also another thing that, balance-wise, you're looking in the team of, and one of the key things that absolutely, if Enzo is going to move away, you have to think about, we have to get Cole Palmer back to his best this season. That is one of the main objectives of Xabi Alonso. So you're thinking of ways structurally you're going to be able to do that. And he needs to have a midfield behind him who can cover up, who can sweep up, who can retain possession and get him the ball in good areas. So I'd be looking for someone like Aurelien Tchouaméni. If that would be possible, I think that'd be a huge signing if Chelsea could do it. But again, I think it's probably unlikely. But that would be my dream swap if we're doing negotiating with Real Madrid.
It's a great shout, man, and you've hit on something that I think is really, really important there that I don't feel like enough Chelsea fans talk about. The instant thing with Enzo Fernandez is the output, right? Like you say, a player with 15 goals and however many assists, like, you need to replace that. But I've kind of had this opinion for the last few seasons, which isn't necessarily a popular one. I think Enzo Fernandez has actually made it really difficult to balance the team because of the exact very specific type of player that he is. He's not really a number 6, he's not really a number 8, and he's not really a number 10. He is some mix of all of those and does some aspects of the 6, some aspects of the 8, and some aspects of the 10 really well.
Yeah.
So my dream, one, not necessarily a player, but it's kind of what you're hitting on. If we sell Enzo Fernandez, we replace him with an actual deep-lying midfielder who facilitates play. Because instead of, like, you in general, your deep-lying central midfielders don't get 10, 15 goals a season. And there's kind of a reason for that, I think. What I would like to see in place of Enzo Fernandez starting deep, bombing on and scoring goals, which he's amazing at, don't get me wrong, but I want to see 5 more goals from Cole Palmer. I want to see 5 more goals from João Pedro. I want to see 5 more goals from Esteval Willian and whoever ends up on our left wing. And that for me is like, we've kind of, although Enzo Fernandez is incredible at starting deep and getting forward and scoring those goals and stuff, I almost think that's at the detriment of the rest of our attacking players. I think we've got too many players that want to score goals, so everyone's kind of stepping over each other a little bit and treading on each other's toes. And when you throw a deep-lying midfielder into that mix as well, it kind of just makes things more complicated. So for me, I love Aurélien Tchouaméni, fantastic player. We were linked with him before he went to Real Madrid, and it felt really natural, didn't it? He felt like the kind of midfielder that we should have gone for in the first place. But Xabi Alonso loves a deep-lying distributor, and he's a good passer as well. And you know, he's, like you say, he gets a couple of goals in that, but that's not really what you'd bring someone like that in for. I think it's going to be fascinating to see if, you know, the news is heating up today, especially about Enzo Fernandez negotiating with Real Madrid, and you know, Jose Mourinho wants him, so it looks like we're going to start seeing something soon. A trade seems like a great idea. I know a lot of fans are interested in Arda Güler, a lot of fans are interested in Carreras, who's the left back I think you were referring to before. And Xabi Alonso brought Carreras to Real Madrid in the first place, didn't he? So there's something quite interesting in that. But again, another youngster, so an interesting caveat in there. But I'd be buzzing with a Tchouaméni if we could get that to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the alternative is that, you know, you look at the way Andre Santos was mainly used in his first season at Chelsea, which was kind of a lot different to the way I anticipated his first year at Chelsea was going to go in terms of profile-wise. He was used much more as a mature, kind of disciplined, defensive-minded midfielder. So again, like internal versus external, right? If you can't spend as much as you'd like to because of the mess that's been created over recent years, you can't get certain targets that you'd like to. You then look at, okay, worst case scenario, I can't make any signings for the rest of the window. What do I have at my disposal? Which is what Xabi Alonso is probably thinking about right now, is you got Andre Santos. I'm not really a fan of persisting with Romeo Lavia anymore. I think that is a player that I'd be looking, if it's possible, to ship out this summer. Just because you just can't have a situation where a player can only play a couple of weeks a season in such a key position. I mean, in any position, but especially central midfield.
Definitely.
And it used to be that weird thing with Lavia that he'd only play a couple of weeks a season, but he'd be brilliant for those few weeks of the season, and you'd be like, please just stay fit. Last season, we of course didn't get that. Another one for me is Dario Sugo. It's just it's fascinating with Sugo because we just barely saw any of him last year. But I think profile-wise, he for me feels more like someone you'd rotate more for Caicedo within the team.
100%.
I think you have to have someone next to Caicedo who adds to that defensive sort of solidity, as you say. I think Caicedo is very good with the ball at his feet. Don't get me wrong. Like, I think he does have good distribution. But it's trying to find the right partner next to him that I think is going to be the big challenge. And I do like what Santos and Caicedo could become. It's just again, I think symbolically losing 2 of your senior players in one summer, and then just not replacing either of them. I don't know. It's not that I don't have any faith in the players left behind. It's just, I think symbolically that's a bad thing. I think you've got to psychologically, with the Xabi Alonso era, get a feeling to fans that there's an upwards trajectory coming.
100%.
And I think part of that would be getting a new midfielder in to kind of cut ties. And, you know, as we've been discussing, right, if you bring in someone who's different to Enzo, then there isn't going to be that instant comparison to Enzo. And then it kind of creates a fresh start to the Chelsea midfield, doesn't it?
No, I completely agree. I think that all the talk and the news has been about Xabi's going to be backed, and obviously a lot of the PR and the news at the beginning was very much like we're looking for a centre back and a left winger or left-sided attacker, but also within that was saying we'll identify other players to bring in depending on who leaves. So we're kind of entering that phase already. We know we still need a centre back, we know we still need a left back, but it looks like players are on their way out now. So I think a left back's coming in, and I think a midfielder's probably going to come in who is better than our current crop of rotational midfielders. And it's kind of like you said, like what we need is that partner for Caicedo, right? Because Caicedo, albeit is a good distributor and can score a goal and he can be creative, his key skill is ball winning and being that defensive guy. So you kind of need the reverse of that. Someone who is okay and decent at ball winning and the defense stuff, but largely focuses on the distribution side. Because for me, and you said it as well, like Romeo Lavia always looked great when he was fit because he knits our entire team together because he's a deep line distributor. And if we can get a fit version of Romeo Lavia, which maybe Tchouaméni has some of that in his bag as well, that's exactly the kind of thing I think will unlock our attack. Like we've got so many good attackers, even with, you know, how badly the season's gone. Esteval Willian, João Pedro, Cole Palmer, we've got some guys that can really do some damage. And if we don't have an Enzo Fernandez starting deep, bombing on, trying to score goals all the time, and we can facilitate that play up to our attacking players a little bit more, I just think that's what our team's been missing. So, yeah, and I think it's probably nailed on. It's been a crazy saga with Enzo Fernandez, man, and I'm just kind of ready to see the back of it all now.
Yeah, I think the worst thing for Xabi Alonso, like, I'm not happy about it, and I don't think it's a good look. I don't think you can kind of spin losing Fernandez as similar to Cucurella. I don't think you can spin it as something that the club can kind of brush off. Like this Fernandez was supposed to be a massive cog and has been marketed as such for a long period of time. Like, you know, you look at any Chelsea marketing in terms of the kits in recent years, maybe it's notable that this year he hasn't been pictured in any of the kits. Maybe that's quite a defining thing to look at. He wasn't in any of the marketing this year. Every other year he has been, and when he was signed by Blue Co and you know, on that transfer deadline day in 2023, it was a huge deal for Chelsea. And I think the first year of Fernandez, I didn't really understand the hype, and I thought he was really poor. I thought like there was lots to be left to be desired. I think that there has been a transformation. So I think you've got to act quickly. You've got to make a statement, and you know, you've got to try and fill that gap the best way you can. It's a real shame because I think that even if Fernandez desired going to Real Madrid, what's probably made this still happen quickly is our on-pitch failure. I think that's, you know, just because a player desires to go somewhere doesn't mean they have to go there instantly. I think if we provided better results, I think Fernandez would have stuck around at least for another year.
I'm not going to lie to you. I think if we'd have given him, because he's been negotiating his contract for a while now as well. This is the other thing. I think that if for me, and this is the kind of truth about Fernandez, like one of the reasons I won't be so sad to see the back of him is I do get this slightly disingenuousness from him. I think he's a bit of a mercenary that plays up to the proper Chelsea thing, right? Because I think if we'd have signed him, given him 200k a week or whatever it was that he wanted, like fixed, it might even have been more than that, I'm not sure. I think he wouldn't even be agitating for a move. So I think that part of it is that yes, the on-field issues are definitely there as well, but so I thought he had 4 years left on his contract. Someone told me in the comments the other day that he's got 6 years left on his contract. I think any player understands if you've got 6 years left on your deal, you're not in a strong negotiating situation. So I feel like if he'd have got his money and he'd have been on a 6-year deal, he'd have been like, yeah, sound, let's do it, let's go.
Yeah, I think that's the thing though. Like, this is elite football. This is the characters you have to deal with, unfortunately, and this is the game that has been built. And it's one of the confusing things I think about the way Chelsea have operated is that they think that seemingly football is going to radically change overnight at the top level, is that top players are not going to demand high wages, and when you fail on the pitch, they're not going to look towards their peers, they're not going to look at other elite clubs, and that people don't, like Chelsea do not live in an isolated bubble. These players have international colleagues that will play at these clubs. They will have friends, they will have agents, like that will have their own personal interests at heart, right? And I think that that's something that I find it hard to turn explicitly on players now, because unless they're actively disrespecting the club and actively like having a go at the fans or whatever, I think this is Fernandez is walking into the peak years of his career, and a bit like Cucurella in a different way. Players can't wait years and years and years, giving their best years to something that may turn out to be good in a couple of years' time. Like whatever, like Cucurella and Fernandez might be infused and have some liking towards Xabi Alonso, but they don't have time to wait to see if that turns out to be something, unfortunately. And when we had Hazard, when we had Lampard, when we had JT, some of these players are so deeply connected to Chelsea forever, right? But I think we have to be humble enough to go, if Chelsea in that era were where they are now, the likelihood of keeping those players would have been much more difficult. It would have been much, as we've seen with Arsenal, right? As we've seen with a lot of clubs, like that's just unfortunately, that is the nature of the beast.
For sure.
And Liverpool have dealt with similar for a lot of times. Like to find the one club men is just almost non-existent now. So I think that's
100% agree.
And I'm not saying that Fernandez is blameless and he hasn't done things that obviously this is part of my problem with him being banned a couple of months ago, is that the way we dealt with him saying he liked Madrid compared to what happened on that bus for Argentina, I mean, it just completely undermines everything, right? Like you can't, how you're dealing with those two situations. He literally got given the captain's armband by Enzo Maresca at the start of that season. And it's the same with Cucurella, but it's also the environment that's been created that you have to ask questions of why players feel like they can act like this and why they treat the club in a disposable manner. And my feeling is that it's the leadership that has created that culture, unfortunately.
I definitely agree with you. I think that a lot of the issues that we're facing right now were definitely created by Chelsea, one of which as well, which is, it was interesting what you said, like obviously with the players, like they haven't got that long, in their careers because it is a short career and stuff. But the difference I would say there is these players are committing to these 6, 8, 10-year contracts. They are the ones that are signing these contracts. And that isn't, you can't walk into that situation being like, it's just going to be how it ever was. I'll sign a 6-year contract and it's basically the same as if I had a 3-year contract, because the nuances change. Like there are 3 situations with the Enzo Fernandez thing that can happen now. One of those is he stays, which is essentially a win for Chelsea, because he will have to, with 6 years left on his deal, if he wants to move, he'll have to come in, work hard and play well. He won't be able to down tools. The second situation is that we sell him to Real Madrid for the money that we want. That is also a win for Chelsea. The third situation is the only one that is actually a lose for Chelsea, and it's the one I don't think will happen, is we sell him for cheap. I think out of the 2 likely situations that will happen, it's actually a win-win, because it will show the rest of the players that if you sign these long contracts, you don't have the power to agitate yourself out of them.
I mean, I slightly push back a little bit on that, because I think that contracts, I think in football only mean what they mean at a certain period of time. When things are going well, that 6-year contract looks really set in stone, and it looks like it's something that's going to stabilize that player and keep them at your club for a long period of time. Results change that, dynamics change that. And we saw last summer with Alexander Isak, we've seen it so many times. You see it literally at all different levels of football, every level of football. If a player wants to make a move happen and fans maybe don't like it, right? But it's the way the game works. Again, we could all be holistic and wish that every player acts like Ben Chilwell when they're frustrated and doesn't really say anything, right? But that's not how it works for a lot of players. And I feel that these long contracts, these amortized long contracts, were always based around, okay, you've done this to get around this, but it relies, like, on pitch success has to follow. That's the only way this method is going to work out, because 2-3 years into this, either players are going to be asking for improved terms, which is what's happened, because they've started to perform on the pitch, or they're going to start agitating. And it always becomes a point with any player, no matter what I emotionally feel about them, whether I want them to stay, wherever I want them to go, is where you come to that thing of, do you want this figure in your club potentially bringing the mood down, bringing the dressing room down, causing problems? And there always becomes a negotiating point where compromise is met. And that's always the power that I think players have.
Do you not think it's a bit different, though? Because if you've got even 3 years left on your contract, that's a really different game, because your value is a lot lower. If you've got 6 years left on your deal, you have a lot there. Even if you did, like if Enzo Fernandez makes the decision to come back and we don't sell him, imagine that, and he comes back into the team, creates problems, doesn't train, forces himself into the bomb squad or whatever, do you think that that is really the type of thing he would do, knowing that he's got 6 years left on his deal, and that if he doesn't get a reasonable amount of football in the next year, he's going to struggle to be able to facilitate a move?
Yeah, it obviously is. It's not a case of it's not. Yeah. That your value will depreciate. Like, and we even saw the effects of this when Isak got his move. Right, it's taken him about a year because of the way he acted over that summer. Because he was out of shape really when he arrived at Liverpool, and that caused him problems. It is a balancing act. The clubs have power, the players have power, and it's about negotiating that, right, and on a case by case basis. Like, obviously, the problem that Chelsea have got with players like Enzo Fernandez is because of their status, because of their brand, because of the way they're viewed, because they have interest from Real Madrid. It's a very different situation if you're Philip Jorgensen, and you want to get out. It's really a case of who's actually interested in you.
Yeah.
When a team like the caliber of team that Real Madrid are, that come calling, and to be honest, I think it's been kind of set in stone really from the moment he signed for Chelsea. I think we all expected that Real Madrid, it was even like a month or two after signing for Chelsea, we were hearing rumours about Real Madrid. This has always been destined to happen. It's just
agreed.
The way it's happened more sooner than any of us would have wanted it to is kind of the problem. And I think that, again, like the reality is, like, this will continue to happen with players if we have another atrocious season. And financially too, there also becomes a point where Chelsea are going to have to start selling players they don't want to, because you can't just sell the players you want to all the time if a market doesn't open up and those players' values aren't there. I think that's also the problem with the current model.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting with Enzo Fernandez as well, because he's one of a few players that can only go to a very small handful of clubs in the world that could actually afford him. And if none of those other clubs want him. So this is the interesting thing with the Real Madrid situation, right? They're being linked to Matheus Fernandes, for instance. Now, word on the street is that Jose Mourinho wants Enzo Fernandez, and apparently there is a deal to be done. But they're not jumping at it like they did with Marc Cucurella because of the price. So even Real Madrid, who are going nuts in this transfer window, looking to buy, kind of rebuild their Galactico era, Enzo Fernandez is playing a dangerous game, because if Real Madrid decide that 120 mil is a stretch too far, or we can't agree on a player trade or something, no one else is going to come in for him. So I think it's really interesting, mate. We could have done an entire episode just talking about this. Do you know what I mean?
No, 100%. It is a complex situation, no doubt.
Yeah, definitely. But really fascinating take on it, man. It's great to chat to you about it. But we will move on. And who is your fourth player you would like to see out, and who would you like to replace him with?
So Liam Delap out, and then it's a player we actually own who I think should be brought back, and that's Nicholas Jackson. I believe you've probably covered this before. I just passionately believe that Jackson is more than good enough for a squad role at Chelsea. I've consistently been baffled. Not so much, like, I'm never going to argue with someone who goes Jackson. My argument with Nicholas Jackson has never been that he's this exceptional, world-beating, perfect centre-forward who has to play as the first choice for Chelsea and there's no other option. That's never been my argument. My argument has always been the context of his arrival in 2023, what he did under intense scrutiny and pressure as a very raw forward who'd played actually quite as a winger for Villarreal and only converted to a forward and had this incredible late burst at Villarreal before he joined Chelsea. And he's had to go through that harsh spotlight. But actually, if you look at the numbers he put up over those 2 seasons at Chelsea, when you contextualise those numbers with the numbers we had been getting quite consistently with other strikers, who some of whom were a lot more expensive than Nicholas Jackson and had a lot more expectations when they arrived at Chelsea than Nicholas Jackson, all of that to me makes me feel that Jackson, with the quite clear connection he's had with Cole Palmer, those two have always seemed to work quite well together. The tireless running, the movement that I think causes a lot of problems for defenders. If you watched the France-Senegal game the other night, exceptional defenders that France have, and I think that even then Jackson was causing them problems. And when you contrast that with Liam Delap, I mean, there's just kind of no argument, really, unfortunately, for Liam Delap, who I wanted Chelsea to sign, but it just has not worked out. And I think that the deficiencies in Delap's game are so vast that we don't really have, unless he magically transforms under Xabi Alonso.
Yeah.
It feels like the gap is so huge
Yeah.
that we don't really have the time, and he's probably not going to get the time with no European football in the upcoming season to bridge that gap that we need. Like, to even be a good rotational option. Like, we've just been talking about with Fernandez, you're losing 15 goals. How are you going to make up those goals in some way? Now, I'm not guaranteeing that Jackson is going to give you 15 goals, especially if he's not playing as much football. But at the very least, from the start of the season, if you've got João Pedro and Nicolas Jackson in your ranks, no, I don't think anyone can argue with me. I just kind of laugh when people go that Delap and Jackson are basically the same, and I'm just... They're just not even, they're worlds apart for me. And that, again, that's not me arguing that Jackson is the perfect player. I think for me, João Pedro starts the season as a starting Chelsea centre forward because I think he had a really good individual season last time out. But Jackson, there's more there. And I don't know why we invested all that time. And it was a lose-lose for both club and for player last season. Although he won the Bundesliga, I don't understand why you'd go to Bayern Munich when you're always going to be the understudy. You were never going to be the first choice.
No, it's a really pertinent choice, and I completely agree with you, to be honest. For me, the whole Liam Delap thing was a market opportunity. That's all it was. We didn't buy him because he fit the football, and I found that unusual in itself because so much emphasis was put on the style of football that we were looking to play by, Blueco. They were like, we're looking for the right manager to play the right style of football, and we believe in their system. And then you go and get Liam Delap, purely because it was a market opportunity. I agree with you as well. I think the conversation that Liam Delap and Jackson are the same is absolutely wild. 2 goals in 41 appearances. 41 appearances, 2 goals. That is £15 million a goal. It's absolutely wild. Jackson, at the end of the day, even in Liam Delap's best season, as the number 1 striker for Ipswich, scored 12 goals. Jackson, in his best season in the Premier League, has got 14. So even...
And playing, despite Ipswich getting relegated, the scrutiny on Jackson playing for a club like Chelsea. Like, I do think that Jackson's missing that early time where we lost to Forest at the start of that season. I remember he had quite a bad miss. It feels like people... One of my biggest frustrations when I'm analysing players and I'm seeing the discourse is that I think people make perceptions of players, positive or negative, quite early on. And then they become kind of set in stone about a player. And so, for instance, like, some people have a perception about a goalkeeper that's really good with the ball at his feet, but then actually the actual evidence over a long period of time tells you that he isn't good with the ball at his feet. But, people just have perceptions and kind of myths about players. And it's the same with Jackson. I think people made their minds up very early on with Nicolas Jackson and have never really been... And listen, he has done things that have hurt his reputation. Like that red card at the Newcastle, I was scathing about it at the time, as we all were. And that could have cost Chelsea their season right there, if luckily it didn't. So I'm not, again, like, just being a Jackson defender or someone who likes him coming back. Those are things that he obviously needs to stop. But listen, again, like, having a go at Jackson, at the time it was like people were claiming that Jackson was the discipline problem at Chelsea. And then he left and the last season just played out.
Record. I think one thing that people very rarely talk about in the Jackson situation as well is that he wouldn't be coming back to anything near the same situation that he was in when he was here before. For the 2 seasons, he was our unchallenged number 9. So when Jackson has an off game, he knows he's still going to play the next game because your backup is Mark Guew or Pedro Neto, do you know what I mean, in the number 9 spot. So the Chelsea that we bring Jackson back into is a Chelsea that at the moment has 5 strikers on the books in João Pedro, Liam Delap, Nicolas Jackson, Mark Guew, and Emmanuel Omega, who potentially is coming in from Strasbourg if we don't loan him out as well. So Jackson doesn't just come back and be like, cool, I'm just going to get to coast or whatever. It's like one bad game and there's someone waiting to take your spot, which is something he never had before. And it was something I really think that he was missing. I think the other thing is about the versatility, right? Because he was converted from a left winger. He actually did play left wing a few times for Bayern Munich last season as well. I also think there's maybe, although he's not necessarily showing it all of the time at Senegal at the moment, there is something to be said in the fact that he's been training alongside Harry Kane, Michael Olise, some of the best players in the world, and also under Vincent Kompany, who's, I'm not saying he's like one of the world's best managers, but he had a phenomenal season and plays a really aggressive style of football as well. So, I think there may be something that he's picked up from there that could be useful to us. And I agree with you. It's not about saying Jackson's going to come in and be the guy, but it is saying that if we wanted to buy someone who had 26 Premier League goals in 2 seasons, we'd have to spend a lot of money. Or we can, as a backup, a rotational option and a versatile potential left wing, we can give Jackson that opportunity. So I'll back it, to be honest. Liam Delap, like I say, for me, just a market opportunity gone wrong. And I think it's best for us and him if he moves on to somewhere that, because if you play a certain type of football and make Liam Delap your main man, he'll score goals, probably. I think just the systemic kind of juxtaposition of the possession style football that we were trying to play and Liam Delap being the kind of striker that he is was never really going to work. And yeah, Nicholas Jackson, to me, makes sense to bring him back in. So I love that. And I guess that means we'll take it on to the last player you would like to see out and who you would like to replace him with.
Yeah, I feel like he could still have a role for Alonso, but I've just kind of got tired by watching the same thing over and over again, and that's Pedro Neto.
Okay.
Again, I think at the moment, like, I could absolutely see him fulfilling a wing-back role and actually maybe doing quite well. So, this is not me saying that I can't see any way back for Chelsea. I think it could. I just think his lack of consistency. Now, you are going to replace him with a player that doesn't really have much sell-on value, but I'd go for Jarrod Bowen.
Okay.
I just think pound for pound, Jarrod Bowen's output in the Premier League for a team that has been quite bad for a number of years is kind of hard to argue against. And I guess it's that question mark tactically too. And this is maybe the same tactical concern we've had with Neto, right? Neto played in a counter-attacking team for a long period of time and then moved into a team that had the ball for a lot more. And suddenly his starting position is not on the halfway line for attacks. It's, near the 6-yard box and he has a defender standing in front of him. And how do you deal with that? But I just think Jarrod Bowen, you look at his end product. When I did it a few weeks back, looked at his numbers and compared them, the amount of goals he scored. And again, like, if we're looking at prime Premier League ready players now, I think what we did quite well with João Pedro was take a younger Premier League player that maybe was about to explode, and we've capitalised on that, at least at the time of speaking now, that maybe that player is there another player out there? I mean, another player I'd look at, again, very different profile to Jarrod Bowen, but one that I really like is Njai from Everton.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is positionally and based on a system similar to Leverkusen with those 2 number 10s. You could see Ndiaye playing that role. The problem you've got is because of the wide. I wonder if it's going to be the fascinating thing especially with Enzo Fernandez leaving. I'm very curious to see what if Alonso was to do a similar system or shape. He may have to play much more wide than he was doing at Leverkusen, which then is going to have a knock-on effect to how players are used within the system. But Njai would definitely be bringing in someone who could play one of those central roles, maybe alongside Cole Palmer, right? And I just think technically he's really silky on the ball. I think he opens up space. He operates in tight spaces for Everton and can be a really creative player. I've just always been impressed by watching him. His numbers may not be astonishing, but again, is that a player that you a bit like Pedro, that you buy now, who actually in a better environment could actually explode playing with a better quality of player around them?
Kind of like what happened to João Pedro, right?
Yeah.
Because João Pedro, 10 goals in his last season at Brighton, 5 of which were penalties, so only 5 goals from open play. Having taken no penalties for us this season, has, scored bags and bags full. And that was just coming into a team with better players around him, which got the best out of him. So if I had to push you to say either Bowen or Njai, which one would you go for?
I probably enjoy watching Njai more. I'll probably go with Bowen just for end product. It's the best judgment I can make right now, but I think Bowen is obviously very much a now signing.
Yeah, it's like 20 GA the last 3 seasons in a row, isn't it?
Yeah. If you're just going for numbers, then that's the guy you're going for. If you're just purely being quite brutal in terms of data, that's who you'd be looking at for an end product. But maybe long term, people talk about ceilings a lot. Like maybe Ndiaye has a better ceiling. I'd go with Bowen, and also we've heard the links that have died down again. He's obviously going to be making a move away from West Ham this summer. And maybe a more realistic get for Chelsea in their current predicament.
I think it makes sense because it's kind of like what we were talking about with Grimaldo earlier. A Jared Bowen still creates a pathway for an Esteban Willian and a Giovanni Quenda to get game time and come and take that spot. But if you do get someone a little bit younger, then all of a sudden you're loading certain positions with lots of competition, which inevitably means you're probably going to lose someone at some point. I think, Jared Bowen... The reason I actually had this conversation with Jay from Talking Chelsea when we did one of these, but he was like Garnacho for Jared Bowen, and I was like, mate, we can't be adding more left-footed, right-sided players, man. We've got so many, it's wild. But if you take Pedro Neto out, that makes sense because then you're not overloading that same position. You can imagine Esteval playing in the half space. You can imagine Quenda potentially playing wing back as well. So it does give you a lot of versatility. Obviously, Jared Bowen also has occasionally played number 9 for West Ham. So, versatile with good GA and an experienced player who, for the last few seasons, knows what it's like to play under pressure, I think it's fair to say. And maybe that's something that we don't have a lot of in the squad. So it's a really interesting shout. So absolutely love that. So the 5 are Robert Sanchez for Mike Maignan, which I think is a lot of fans will agree with that. The second one was Marc Cucurella for
I'd say Lewis Hall more realistically. Tchouaméni for Fernandez. Jackson for Delap, and then Bowen for Neto.
So before we started recording, you mentioned you might have a cheeky 6th, and I think we've just about got enough time, and we'll throw it in if you've got another one.
The cheeky 6th was in Dye. As kind of that was the extra one I was going to add on. As a player, the only other one I'd add is, I guess again it's internally, is I'd be fascinated to see Genesis Antwi or Kavuma McQueen potentially stay around in the squad, or at least in pre-season. And maybe then you're replacing someone like Malo Gusto if you could convert maybe one of them to a wing-back position. So those are the other ones I've been looking at across the course of the season. Another easy open goal would have been Josh Achimpong for Wesley Fofana. Again, but we already have those 2 players, so it's a little bit different than recalling someone from loan.
Yeah, really interesting though, because everyone I've done with these so far has gone in on centre backs, and you've really made a lovely spread across it. It's been really interesting to talk to you about it. But and you know what as well, all of them, none of them particularly unrealistic. And my judgment for that is the fact that Tottenham are currently being linked with Sandro Tonali. If Tonali goes to Spurs, then anything is possible, right? I think Tchouaméni, I love the idea of having a player like that, a partner for Caicedo that makes our midfield an actual midfield. I think is something really, really important. And the goalkeeping situation will be an interesting one to keep an eye on for sure, but I would imagine it feels like the left back spot is going to be the first one to kind of be rectified, doesn't it? And there's loads of links at the moment. So Dan, that's it, that's your list of in and outs. Absolutely love it. It's been a pleasure to have you on the channel. Have you got anything interesting coming up for the summer? To feel free to tell my viewers about what's going on Son of Chelsea.
Yeah, so I've just done a long-form discussion with the German football correspondent for The Athletic, Seb Stafford-Bloor, all about Xabi Alonso. He gave so much insight in terms of his Bayer Leverkusen days and his management style. So if you're interested in that, definitely go and check it out. It's on the podcast feed and also on my YouTube channel. Also, go and check out my Substack, Son of Chelsea. I'm writing regular articles on there as well. And going to be doing more collabs and obviously ramping things up as we get closer to the start of the Xabi Alonso era.
Oh, fantastic, man. Well, thanks so much for coming on. Guys, it's very unlikely if you found me, then you've probably already found Dan because he is one of the Chelsea OGs. But if you're not already subscribed to Son of Chelsea, we are collaborated. So just click the profile picture and subscribe to his channel. Check out the Substack. And that sounds absolutely fascinating, by the way, with the Bundesliga correspondent. I'll be hopping over to that straight away. Nice one. Thanks very much for coming on, man. And guys, thank you very much for sticking around until the end. If you did, we will both catch up with you very, very soon. Take it easy. Peace.